inform that the amendment be disagreed to, and I call the member for Canberra.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Social Security Legislation Amendment Bill and the amendments that we have moved. Now, Labor fully understands the value and the positive impact of our social security system. It is fundamentally important to us alleviating poverty and having an egalitarian society when we support people who are unable to work. And right now we have over 1 million Australians who are out of work or looking for more work, and it is not the time to be making it harder for them. Any Australian who has found themselves out of work and has to rely on our system and on Services Australia and Centrelink's administration of that needs to know that this is a system that will actually support them to be able to live with dignity and to be able to find a job. In fact, our social security system should be a source of national pride, like universal health care, like public education. It has been fundamental to making Australia a relatively egalitarian society, and it is something that we should take pride in and ensure that the policy settings around it enable it to be an effective system. At the moment, so much of it is inadequate, and so much of the way that it is administered is problematic. But we called upon that system to catch so many Australians when we were hit by mass job losses when the pandemic hit in early 2020. And we saw the power of that system as we actually were able to reduce the level of poverty in Australia when the government increased temporarily the Jobseeker payment significantly. But we saw people lining up around the streets in scenes reminiscent of the Great Depression, needing to access that support and those payments, and needing to access them in person in particular. We saw long lines of people stretching out of the doors of Centrelink shop fronts around the country as workers were left jobless. And the Centrelink in Braddon, which no longer exists in my electorate of Canberra, was no exception. There were long lines outside there. People went to seek help, having lost their jobs. So when the payment was first reduced and then cancelled, as I mentioned, research done by the Australian National University confirmed that when those payments were increased with the coronavirus supplement, that actually hundreds of thousands of Australians were lifted out of poverty, and that is the sort of things we should be looking at doing. But when the payment was first reduced and then cancelled completely, those same Australians were pushed back into poverty. But another really important aspect of that support was it enabled people to be at home and to stop the spread of COVID. So we also relied on that system as a health measure to actually support people to be able to live safely as we were facing the spread of the COVID-19 virus. But anyway, it brings me to this bill, which relates to the 2021-22 budget measure, New Employment Services Model, which comprises spending of $700 million over 5 years and savings of $1.1 billion over 4 years from 2021 to 22. The bill introduces changes to mutual obligation arrangements which would achieve $191.6 million in savings over 4 years by delaying when job seekers receive payments. This is the sort of policy that we're looking at under this government, making a saving by just delaying when people can receive payments. You really would like to see your parliament doing much better than this. It introduces changes to participation requirements as part of the new employment services model announced in the budget, which gave significant implications for job seekers. These changes need to be considered so no Australians are left behind. And as has been mentioned, we are concerned that the government is rushing this through the parliament and hence have moved these amendments. That is why we referred it to a Senate inquiry in the first place, which reported in June last year. We have heard nothing from the Employment Minister that offers confidence to anyone looking for a job, particularly the long-term unemployed, that this government is on their side. In fact, in the course of the Senate inquiry, the National Employment Services Association submitted that there has likely been a considerable reduction in investment for disadvantaged job seekers. Deputy Speaker, there are almost 1.5 million job seekers, thousands of workers and hundreds of providers and businesses who are part of the employment services sector, and these changes are too important not to get right. Labor is concerned that Schedule 8 of the bill would mean that about 144,000 new job seekers could lose between $300 and $450 in payments a year because of changes to when they would start receiving payments. It's a very sneaky way to save money, targeting the most vulnerable, targeting people that Australian society should be supporting when they've lost their jobs. This cut in payments is linked to when a job seeker is able to enter into an employment plan. Under Schedule 8, new job seekers who use online services would be disadvantaged compared to those who choose face-to-face services, which means they could wait up to 10 days before they receive their first payment. This is a very strange outcome from this bill, potential outcome, in that most of what Services Australia and Centrelink are aiming to do is encourage people online, but this actually creates a disincentive for people to go online. And as mentioned, this, we are concerned that while technology is an important thing and we should be utilising it as much as we can, we need to be using it in the best possible way, in ways that don't actually increase hardship for people who have lost their jobs. And see, the problem is, Deputy Speaker, how can job seekers choose face-to-face services when this government has been steadily axing Centrelink shopfronts around the country? And I know because this happened in my electorate of Canberra just recently. Last year, the only Centrelink shopfront in my electorate, the only shopfront in central Canberra, was shut at short notice. This was in the middle of a pandemic when, as I mentioned earlier, we had seen hundreds of people lining up down the street when the pandemic hit in Braddon, wanting to access that service. A replacement service will not be opened in my electorate to replace it. Services Australia claimed that it was shut because of a 40% drop in customer demand since 2016 as a result of demographic changes in the area. And this only came out through questioning by Senator Gallagher in Senate estimates. Despite this decrease, the Braddon shopfront was still used by 27,000 people every year. The secretive nature of the closure was also very concerning. I only found out about this planned closure after chancing upon a Facebook ad for the office space and confirmed that it was in fact the Centrelink office space that was being advertised. Despite huge community support for the service remaining open and next to no community consultation from the government, they went ahead and axed the shopfront anyway. The thousands of customers who have been instead told to use online portals or visit shopfronts in Gungahlin, Belconnen and Woden have had barely any notice and no consultation on that change. Not everyone can use online services. Not everyone has a computer or a smartphone, and many of Centrelink's own requirements need you to come in. And this is a perfect example of that, where this is actually, people will be worse off if they use the online option rather than coming in, but their options to come in are extremely limited. It forced people to travel to Belconnen, Woden or Gungahlin to access face-to-face services, and my constituents struggling to survive on the disgraceful $43 a day job seeker payment will have to spend a significant portion of that very low income on transport to get there. The illogical nature of this bill was that despite closing shopfronts and pushing customers online, under this bill, if job seekers are forced to use online services, they could be, on average, at least 8.4 days' pay worse off than job seekers who used face-to-face services. At a time when the government is closing shop fronts to cut costs, this bill will act as a disincentive for job seekers to utilise online employment services and appears to be at odds with the objectives of the new employment services model. Deputy Speaker, Labor recognises that the current employment services system is in need of reform. We are not opposed to changes designed to improve the system to make the best use of available technology for the benefit of job seekers. And this is why Labor will only support the bill if Schedule 8 is removed and makes amendments as negotiated with the Australian Council of Social Services. These amendments include protections for job seekers who are principal carer parents or have a partial capacity to work, and a digital code of ethics to protect people from automated decisions and to protect privacy. I note that while the government have advised that they are prepared to remove Schedule 8 from the bill, it has not reversed this policy. This is again proof that Labor is the only party that can deliver fairer employment services. Thank you.